Thank you for inviting us. Today is you see my background. Today is a really beautiful, warm here at Iowa, and I hope the same at Chicago as well. Well, I will briefly talk about the analytics tool in general, and Dr. Brummett will share his experience of the tool and further intervention. We work together on learning analytics-based personalized feedback to support individual student. Let's start. So the analytics dashboard is a comprehensible tool to help instructors to make data-informed decisions. It provides the insight into students' engagement with the course materials and tools, activities, and homework related to performance. And as we all know, the essence of the learning analytics is near real-time data. So it can trigger actions immediately and get results from any changes or communication strategy right away. So Iowa Analytics tool presents various information, including course profile and students' engagement in various areas. And next, I will show some examples, and some screenshots were from Dr. Brummett's course this semester. And due to limited time, I just include a few of them. So let's start with the first example. So this example shows the students' general access to course materials when students access which materials. So top chart shows the number of students access each day, and bottom right shows the individual material, and instructors can select specific material, and the right chart shows the cumulative access of that material. And next example is the heat map, which shows the peak day and time range of students' activities. So with the date on the top, instructors can select the specific date to see the specific engagement. So some courses actually use this information to pick the certain virtual office hours to when students access the most. And then not only the all activity, instructor can select the specific activity, for example, submissions, and what time and day students submit the most. So they can kind of guess that the time of peak time the students submit any kind of a homework and their assignments. And next examples, it shows the relationship between students' activities and performance. This screenshot shows the alignment of between homework and the major test. So each dot represents each student. So instructor can see when students really they did all the homework, but you know they didn't perform as well as homework. So they can kind of see how students perform those alignment. So I'm sure all of you are so anxious to hear from faculty how it helps. So next, Dr. Brummett will share his experience with this tool, and most of all, further intervention we work together to support individual students.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Jane, actually, if you go back a couple slides to the first slide of one more. There we go, right there. So as far as the IID goes, the Instructional Analytics Dashboard, I think it's, as a course, as a department, as a university, we have built in a lot of resources for students into our Canvas course. And this is one way to maybe get an insight into how well students are taking advantage of that and accessing those resources, finding information where it's at. There's a lot of different ways in which, as an instructor in a very large enrollment course, I can get a sense of how students are how well they're accessing things, what's confusing, what's not. But very, very rarely do I actually get data in aggregate that helps me make real-time decisions and changes. And the dashboard here is one thing that does that. I can start to look at pages and different things that I know are really important, that are really timely, that are directly impactful for students. And dashboard they just look at the course materials as one example. If I see something is lagging in terms of students accessing it, I can reorganize my Canvas course website in real time. I can talk about it more in class. I can make changes that then carry over to actions that students can take. So this is just kind of one small example. We could go through many more, but it really is instrumental in terms of making sometimes large decisions, but a lot of times there's smaller things that are made over the course of many weeks throughout the semester. That this is, I think, now open to me that I'd never had before. So I think let's maybe go back to the next slide and kind of talk about the other interventions that that were taking place. So like the dashboard, it gives me access to student information, but information on its own, and that data is not always, I have access to now through the dashboard, but there's still other ways in which I maybe want to use that. And that's where the start of this intervention originated from in my interactions with Office of Teaching, Learning, Technology and Jane and her team, is that a lot of students, so I'm thinking in a typical spring or fall semester for me, I have anywhere from 600 to 1,500 students, kind of depending on the, 600 to 1,500, depending on the semester and the course. So this upcoming fall, I'll probably have 1,000 incoming freshmen that are really excited, ready to go. And then about 4 weeks in, that first exam hits, and the reality of kind of the challenge and the perseverance that's necessary in college starts to hit. And we definitely obviously have the top tier students that no matter what I do, they will always be successful. But there's still a large cohort that have to learn how to learn. They have to learn how to handle some of the ups and downs that occur. And that oftentimes it's easier for that to happen in one-on-one interactions. We all can think back to a time when we've had that one-on-one interaction that really shaped how we go through it and handle a challenge. The problem is like I said, I'll have 1,000 students this fall. And so, and as you can see from the picture there, it's a packed auditorium. It's probably 600 people in the auditorium. It's easy to hide in the back and not necessarily get one-on-one time. I may never see that person if they don't actually come into office hours or sit near the front or something like that. But at the end of the day, students really want that personalized attention, and instructors want to give that personalized attention. That's a very tall order to kind of bridge that gap. So one way in which we're doing that with Jane and her team is we're using data from throughout the course, a variety of different sources of data. The problem though is I may not have access to that on my own, so that's why I need to interact with Jane's team. And I'm also, my background is chemistry. I'm not someone that necessarily is, studied effective motivational messaging. I think I've gotten better at it over time if I've continued to work in this intervention process. But I think to where I started, I'm definitely not, never was, and probably won't be an expert on that. And it takes a lot of time to help kind of interact with students in a more individualized process. But what we've developed is an intervention process that does give individualized feedback about what a student is doing and what they can do better. There is some generalization that occurs there, but we're using their data to assist in that feedback. So Jane, if you want to go to that next slide. So what we're using, the analytics team gathers data from a variety of sources. Some of it's engagement data, some of it's different pieces of, I would say, kind of behavioral pieces of data. So when are they starting things? Are they doing this assignment that's maybe not for points, but they have to choose to do that? Are they coming to class? A variety of different things. And we kind of hone in on different behavioral aspects of that, things that we know are important for being successful in the course, and or kind of growing and being engaged as a whole. So we target those, hone in on those, and then luckily, because I'm not an expert in effective messaging, we have access to our Center for Teaching in the Office of Teaching and Learning Technology, and they are a phenomenal resource for me and help me kind of craft a message that I think first and importantly acknowledges the hard work a lot of students are are putting in. It acknowledges the possible frustrations of the hard work not matching the outcome of exams. And I think that I found that that's really important in that connection piece in terms of the individualization of recognizing the humanity and the emotion that's wrapped up in a semester. But then I think very importantly, it has this incorporation of different metacognitive prompts that get students to reflect on their own learning, what has been working, what has not been working, what they can do differently. And I pair at the end with some study strategies that are based on their data. So if I see them, they're not using whatever resource, they're maybe not coming to class as frequently as they can, I can give nudges and indicate why this thing is really important, maybe why using these practice problems are really important, and how best to use that resource. So we can incorporate that all wrapped into one message that the students receive, and hopefully not have it be too long, so that way students will actually read it. But so that's something we luckily can make all of this kind of packed into a tight email, but it's all centered around and originating from the original data. So we kind of use that, then it's a cyclic process. We go back to the beginning and we'll do that in the next round of emails, usually either just before or just after an exam. Tends to be when students maybe are most keyed in on that. Then Jay, if you go to that next slide then. So this has been, I mean, so I think these are a variety of qualitative feedback we've got. I'm not going to read these to you, but I think throughout, this is maybe the 5th semester we've done this now. At this point in time, we've had a lot of changes that have occurred, a lot of ways in which we've grown and found better ways of doing things, more effective ways of doing things. And I think we have been honing the intervention over time. To me, the important piece of this is that the analytics, the ability to have a personalized message to students really builds a bridge to those students I may never interact with. It lets them know that I actually am invested in them. And I even though I still may not know that individual student's name, they have the sense that I'm looking out for them. I want them to continue growing. I want them to continue improving. And some students will come in and tell me that in person. It opens the idea for them to come in and start talking. To say, maybe I do need some help, maybe I'm struggling with this, or whatever it is, but it opens that door a little bit for that, builds that bridge, and starts to make a connection in a course when really most of the time, historically, the ball has been in their court. They have to come to office hours, they have to seek that out. This gives me a way in which I can put something out there that makes it a little bit easier for them to maybe to build a connection with an instructor. These are a variety of qualitative messages that we've received at the end. We've typically will do some sort of survey at the end of the semester. We get a little bit of kind of a quantitative feedback and qualitative feedback as well. And these honestly are what kind of keep me engaged in this, is the fact that students are feeling supported, they're feeling noticed. It's building that connection, and I think also helping them as a student, as a learner, encourage that growth mindset throughout the course of their college career. I see a lot of them a lot of times in their first year, and that's really instrumental in terms of their long-term success. I think if we can have change occur early on, that gives them the best possible chance. So, and luckily, because I'm working with Jane and their team, they help put together the survey that goes out, and they will kind of tabulate all that. That way I don't have to be in charge of that. So I can kind of see the results of this. But the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Technology handles a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of this survey at the end of the semester. And I see that 1 minute to question and answer. I think this is a great time for me to stop and see if we have an extra minute of questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm told that this room is mic'd so well that you should be able to hear people asking their questions.
Adam, can you hear us okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
Questions?
Yeah.
We're all looking at this. I have a
Yes,
question.
Kim Arnold from Wisconsin.
Yeah, so Adam and Jane, thanks for the presentation. Been watching this work and thinking about different ways to apply it with different stakeholder groups. And one of the questions I have is what have you done to kind of close the feedback loop to see, like, so do the messages drive behavioral change? Do you see change in their behavior, help seeking behavior, anything like, have you done any work in that space?
Yes.
Yeah, Sal, Jane, I'll let you take that the initial answer on that, yeah.
Yeah, actually, this is we started with a research project. So we really carefully approach this personalized message, because the all message sometimes it's based on students their own how they perceived those message. So that's why we really carefully craft, and that we trace those students' behavior. Not only do we ask students about the feedback, their perception and experience of, or what type of the actions they took as a result of this, as a result of this feedback message, but also we trace all their behavior. So, you know, the before what didn't engage with a certain behavior, but after we kind of see when the message went to who. So we traced any behavior change. But what we found out, and students did, some of the changes is not really detectable. And a lot of the students mentioned about their action was that they look for some external resources, and they reach out to instructors, they reach out to TAs and go over their study strategy and things like that, which is those kind of things that we cannot trace. But what we noticed, the emails and those feedback email trigger students those action, and has those subsequent, those follow actions actually make really real changes of students' learning behavior.
Other questions? I do have one, Jane.
Yep.
You recognize my voice.
Yep.
I want to know, what is the next step for the two of you in this project? You've done this, I think, Adam, you said you've done this for about 5 semesters. What's next?
Well, I think probably Adam might have his own agenda, but I think we have a shared agenda to how we can scale to other courses, right? So we invest a lot of effort and time to figure out how we can standardize this process to more easier for instructors. So Adam, Adam spent so much time with us to how we can do this, but now we learned a lot. And also, we fortunately, Adam got award, the Innovation Teaching Award. So with those awards, we try to develop some like a tool for make those process easier. So it can actually implement some other courses broadly. That was kind of our common goal, but I think Adam might have some other insights.
No, I mean, I think that is our joint goal, as Jane said, is long term. That's where we are looking to take this. I mean, while I am lucky to have the ability to interact with this research with Office of Teaching and Learning Technology and implement it in my course, I think there are many other courses that could benefit from something like this throughout the university. Right now, it's only in whatever chemistry course I'm teaching that year is where this intervention is at. I think there are many other courses that could benefit from it, and many other students that could benefit from it. So our goal is to spread that. I think we have learned a lot in terms of just how to do it in the courses that I am in. I think now we're continuing to, I guess, analyze that, but we are wanting to grow it, wanting to spread that work and make sure it is as many people can benefit from that as possible.
Jane, colleagues that are going to help you with that are in this room. I don't know if you want to call them out or not, just to remind them they're going to help us. Ross Miller is here.
Yes, Ross Miller is my hope.
So you can talk to Ross too, Ross and Rachel here. They can help talk a little bit about this at dinner or as you meet them in the next 24 hours or more. So any other questions before we lose Adam and Jane? Yes.
And I don't know if this is a question for them or not, but if you wanted to bring something like this onto our institution, what would that look like?
Jane, you want to talk a little bit about that, what it might look like to try to share this with another institution?
Well, right now, actually, it runs some Power BI platform with this one. But right now, I mentioned about the Ross Miller, and again, so in the long term, though, we are gonna move to our Canvas environment, like a LTI environment. So since we are using the UDP data to have those, the IAD, the tool. So this can, hopefully in the future, it can expand all the units in schools once we make that happen. And then I see the feedback tool can be part of those IAT in the long-term vision. So this can be also can implement some other course and also other institutions since we are using the UDP data source.
Thank you, Jane. So the bottom line is find Ross. Really, it points back to what Kathy said all along, is standing on the shoulders of one another, learning from each other, and then making it fit into your own institution. The fundamentals of it won't be any different. Some of the application and the back end code and things might be different in your own institution, but the fundamentals are not different.
And I would encourage you to perhaps involve data services and solutions team. I mean, one of the things we hope to do, as you saw in that last priority, is to make sure that these are accessible, shareable, understandable. And, you know, we get a sense that that's sharing, what is the data structure, what is the algorithm that produces whatever, what is the code, the SQL code behind it in the code book. But we also suspect there's APIs that may be involved, and there's probably things we don't suspect that would make it useful that we could learn, you know, going on that journey with you in Iowa.
If I can build on that in 2 sentences, I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, like what Jane, you can take Jane's template and what she's done in Power BI and use that as a template for you and whatever your environment looks like. But I think that templating might look different for what your instructors want versus what Adam wants for his. And so building on, you know, like what Kathy was saying with those queries, things like that, and using that, I think would be a great jumping off point.
We only got about 3 minutes left. Any other questions? One more question, Jane, really quick.
Okay.
Since you have 3 minutes, I'll ask this question. Do you think this will be useful for the advisor community to kind of get into there and ask send all those emails?
Do you hear that okay, Jane?
Could you repeat again?
Yeah, do you think it'd be useful to the advising community? And I think that's where Ross has another dashboard that he's developed that he's working with advisors on, but speak about this one in particular, Jane, with the advisors.
Yeah, I think right now, this tool IAD and this intervention is the major the stakeholders is instructors. So we really try to understand that each course context. But you know, this data learning analytics in general can help with any stakeholders. And the Ross worked with our advisor and have the different platform we call the icon indicator. So Ross can talk about more about that for advisors, how advisors can reach out to students with what information. We are using the UDP data to do that. But we may use a little bit different data points based on what purpose that each stakeholders try to do. So that I would say yes, but I think there is some different platform based on the purpose of the application.
And to speak to that just a little bit more, Iowa has 3 applications that we currently use. One is focused specifically on students to get data to students. That's called Elements of Success. Jason, right over there, can talk to you about Elements of Success if you're interested in data going to your students to make them more self-directed learners. Jane has presented on one that assists with instructors and how they get to that real-time data to help students. And then Ross is working on the digital learning scorecard, which is more focused on working with advisors. So the idea being working with the stakeholders to see what they're trying to solve and then pulling it back for their specific solution. So Jane, Adam, thank you for being here with us, sort of. So, but wish you were here. Wish you were here really quickly.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.